Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Sorry for the delay today, but we are so happy today to have with us Diana Ayton-Shenker. She's the CEO of Leonardo and ISAST, the International Society of Art, Science, and Technology, the executive director there of this ASU-Leonardo Initiative, and the ASU Professor of Practice at the School for the Future of Innovation in Society in the School of Arts, Media, and Engineering. She has a storied history behind her, which I'm sure she'll get into as well. But without further ado, please, Diana, take it away.
Thank you so much, Robert. And thank you everyone for showing up and for your patience. I appreciate that support and interest and that flexibility. One of the things that, of course, we're learning and relearning is our resilience, adaptability, resourcefulness when things come up, as they do with the COVID circumstances we're living in. So here we are. I appreciate being introduced with a storied background. That means, of course, I'm going to have to share some stories today. But first, let me just share that in considering what to address in this wonderful digital culture series that the Arizona State University School of Arts, Media, and Engineering hosts, I thought about it being almost a year since we've been living in very altered circumstances, brought on initially by the pandemic, and also nearly a year since I've joined this series in March of 2020. And what I want to acknowledge and explore with you is how we are learning to unleash creative superpowers, unleashing creative superpowers. So that's what I thought we'd talk about today. And I'll tell you a bit more about what I mean by superpowers and how we're going to be looking at that. But first, this is my version of that map you look at that has a big star that says you are here, so that you know where you are. This is where we are. And I shared this last year. It was a found poster on a restaurant in Paris where I was participating with other artists and scientists looking at art science residencies in my last travel experience before lockdown. So first couple days of March 2020, I look up and I see this. What I do know is we're here and it's now. That's my version of the map of the world that says, where are you? And perhaps of a clock that says, when are you? You are here, we are here, and it's now. So where we are in this here and now that I am going to be sharing is a bit more about what I'm calling the Leosphere, the ecosystem of Leonardo. As Robert mentioned, I'm privileged to serve as the CEO of Leonardo, the International Society of Arts, Science, Technology. And in that capacity also direct the partnership with ASU. And in that process, I'm finding myself constantly learning and relearning not only how we might unleash our creative superpowers, but how we might empower our creative vision. The reason this is so important for us now is that we have been thrown into this upside down, inside out world where everything's sort of the same and everything's changed. That mirrors the story of Leonardo and the organization that began with a pioneering journal in 1968 to find a place to pull together misfits and masters and maestros at the intersection of art, science, and technology. This has now evolved into an ecosystem that's effectively become a global enterprising think tank, where we convene and collaborate across geographies and disciplines and communities through our publications that now, in partnership with MIT Press, include book series and journals and experimental publications. Our articles last year alone were downloaded over 600,000 times. We also convene and collaborate in the ecosystem of Leonardo through a speaker series, the Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous or LASER series, which is now hosted in 45 cities around the world and convened 110 gatherings last year alone. In addition to these creative programs and publications, we are convening through virtual residencies and fellowships and constantly learning and listening to our creative world, even as it is evolving. Last year, we not only pivoted along with everyone else to go digital, as this series had last year when I was privileged to speak at the March, give a talk in March. It was the first time that the digital culture series went online. We were experimenting. What's this thing called Zoom? Is that going to work as a platform? And now, of course, here we are. But the real question is not how do we pivot to do everything that we've done before, but now digitally online? The real question is, how do we seize this moment of disruption and transformation to reimagine what our future is going to be? If all of our industries and our sectors and our assumptions have been upended, what does that open up for us? And one way that we're exploring that question is to look at our ecosystem as an ecosystem. What are we hearing? What are you hearing? And have you been hearing over the past year? When we're looking forward to not only how we come out of this time, but really how we might unleash something that we had, if we had dared to imagine, never imagined that it could happen in this time frame. So the changes that have been anticipated or orchestrated or designed over years and years were imagined to happen over the coming decades. And within 1 year, we've been able to transform at an unprecedented accelerated pace. We need this now because the pandemic of COVID-19 launched what really is now understood best as a syndemic of cascading crises from not only public health threats, but the increasing awareness and undeniability of systemic racism and social injustice, the extreme economic inequity, the political volatility and violence, and the climate catastrophe that is looming over and around all of these crises. I often refer to climate catastrophe, climate change, not as the elephant in the room, but as the room. And within this global syndemic, we need to be listening as an ecosystem to where and how there are opportunities to unleash our creativity in redesigning how we go forward. So what do I mean by unleashing creative superpowers? First of all, I want to acknowledge my colleague, Natalie Nixon, whose new book, Creativity Leap, suggests, as does her work, that creativity is the fluidity with which we move between wonder and rigor. So from the perspective of Leonardo, and sharing with you some insights from Leonardo's experiences and examples of creativity across arts, science, and technology, we know that art has wonder and science has wonder and technology has wonder. Years ago, we wouldn't, not years and years ago, but just a few years ago, we wouldn't be able to connect with each other throughout this year without the technology that we now have that allows us to engage in what we might call this digital interface. But what does this digital interface open up for us? There's something gained, no question, in being able to bring together and connect with people across dozens of countries around the world, over 100 countries represented in our work. But there's something else that is missing and lost that we crave, that cuts through that digital interface, that longing to be with each other. Creativity reignites for us this experience, though, of wonder and rigor that opens up our heart to the possibilities of how we are humanizing our experience of this syndemic and what it opens up for us. We think sometimes of wonder as being the magic of the arts, but I would suggest that wonder is so much at home in laboratories and as it is in studios. And we think of rigor as the scientific method and the scientific experience. And yet we know from creative experience that rigor is the determination and the persistence and the discipline that keeps us going in our creative practice. So unleashing creative superpowers is looking at unleashing a greater capacity and appreciation and experience of wonder and of rigor. But when I say superpower, we might think that that's an elusive capacity. But I'm going to suggest that unleashing our creative superpowers are not just for superheroes. What we really need is to unleash creative superpowers of all of us, not even just of this guy. So the superpowers of creativity that I believe we can unleash begin with each and all of us. And they are love, invitation, and imagination. And I want to talk about each of these three: the power of love, the power of invitation, and the power of imagination. Each of these are absolutely essential components of the superpower of creativity that we need today. So first, to share with you my thoughts about the superpower of love, I'm going to share with you a new story, building on a story that I shared last year, and raise a question. So the story comes again from the digital gods. Last year, I shared my cell phone love story of an autocorrect from my comment on a very happy, joyful moment in a friend's family that was intended to say, love this, and was autocorrected to live thus, as this wonderful imperative. If we could live like that, to live so full of joy. But my new story comes from the digital gods once again autocorrecting on my phone as I was texting with my nephew. And I was reaching out to him during this time of physical distancing as a way to socially connect, and sending him some supportive comments. And he meant to write back, receiving love and sending it back to you. But the digital gods auto-corrected his receiving love to reviving love. And I thought this was such a wonderful, wonderful gift for us that poses a question. What do we need to revive? What might it mean if the superpower of love is not something that we merely receive, but that's lovely too, but it's something that we actually revive, that we, as we send it back, we give it more life. We reanimate, we reactivate. How might that change our creative work? So if our creative work is something that's within capacity of everyone, what happens when we infuse that creative spark, that creative collaboration, our creative contemplation, our creative critique, our creative connection with each other, with this work? When we infuse that with love and give that more life, that amplifies the effect we can have. It amplifies our impact. We need to unleash the power of love in unleashing our superpower of creativity. The second power that unleashes the superpower of creativity is the power of invitation. And it raises three challenges that we're going to talk about. The challenge of interdependence, of inclusivity, and of integrity. So what do I mean by the power of invitation? I mean the power of showing up. It is powerful to be there for each other. It is powerful to show up and do your work. It is powerful to connect with each other, even when there are technical glitches and delays. Even when we are inside our boxes on a screen, even when we are inside the boxes of sheltering in place, or the boxes of our bias, the boxes of our assumptions. And to break out of those boxes is a process of invitation. We need to ask ourselves, what invitations do we accept and what invitations do we offer? Who needs to be invited in? If we are going to unleash our creative superpowers, we need to extend far, far greater and more meaningful invitations to those who are not represented or are underrepresented. And we need to accept and say no to invitations that no longer serve our creative authenticity. So the first challenge is to invite interdependence. So when I speak of inviting interdependence, I want us to be explicit and intentional, that this means our creative work is empowered by becoming collaborative, collective, and in community. We need each other. If we have ever learned a lesson, it is now that we need each other, that we are greater when we connect with each other, when we collaborate, when we look at the collective needs of our community and contribute to that. This also means, from the perspective of Leonardo, that we honor and celebrate the interdependence of arts, science, and technology, not as three parallel independent tracks, but as an interdependent ecology of creativity. And this transdisciplinary, interdependent creative community is part of the power of invitation. Inviting those collaborations is part of a challenge of the power of invitation. So is the power of inclusivity. When we extend or accept an invitation. We need to be explicit and intentional about inclusivity, that there is room for everyone around the circle, and that it's coming together around that circle that creates the greater whole. This means being radically open and opening in our access, our generosity, and our curiosity. So what this has meant and is opening up for us is a greater awareness of how diversity, equity, inclusivity is going to radically enrich and empower our creative work. How speaking up and stepping up is only the first step. So over this past year, when we have experienced stages of the syndemic and are still experiencing this unprecedented cluster of challenges, we have had these puncture points that have intensified, perhaps we could say, a collective trauma. So there is the onset of the pandemic. There's the murder of George Floyd. There's the climate catastrophes and the political violence, the economic hardship. Each of these challenges and segments in this protracted syndemic have broken us open in our awareness, our awakeness to the need for inclusivity, really the beauty and the power of inclusivity. So the first step was speaking up and stepping up. But we know that it is never enough simply to take a stand, that to take a stand requires taking action. So in the spirit of serving as an ecosystem, one of the things we're hearing echoes of in the creative community across art, science, technology is the need to radically open up who is defining, deciding, and designing what the future of our creative superpowers are going to be. And we need to do that, answer the call to the challenge of inviting with inclusivity, of inviting interdependence, of inviting with integrity. To extend the power of invitation with integrity means being genuine and authentic. It means honoring and respecting our own need to build our capacity to safeguard our wellness, our health, so that we have both the audacity to think of ourselves as superpower creative engineers, and the humility to know that we need each other and all of us with integrity to achieve any of those creative visions we bring. And the third superpower that we need to unleash our creative superpower is imagination. We need imagination. Sometimes imagination is used interchangeably with creativity. But I think that it goes a little further. Imagination goes beyond what we actually create, what we are making and generating. It goes into another level of our visioning and envisioning. We need this today more than ever, because we are being called on to reimagine what our social structures are going to be, what our individual structures are going to be, and how that relates not only with each other, but the world around us. We need imagination in order to have genuine compassion and empathy. We don't need to experience each other's suffering, to humanely care. We need to care. We need imagination so that we have compassion for each other, so that we have empathy for each other, so that whatever we design and whatever creative superpower we unleash, it is imagined with our humanity expressed through our compassion and empathy. So I want to tease out just a few of these examples of our unleashed creativity with Leonardo, and then if we have time with my own creative practice. So these are some examples here that you see, and I'm just going to go on and speak about a few. So the first example of Leonardo's imagination is hot off the presses and available right now today through MIT Press and through our website, leonardo.info. Our historic and groundbreaking new issue, the first issue of 2021, on the theme Chaos and Cosmos. This issue of Leonardo is produced and developed in partnership with Sciland Media Lab, a cybernetic arts organization that hosts the Sci-Fest Arts Festival in St. Petersburg annually. Through this partnership, we were able to not only look at their theme of space arts, in which Leonardo in the Leo sphere has a deep history and expertise, but also published bilingually our first completely bilingual issue in English and Russian, at a time when the countries of those who speak English and Russian are fraught in challenged relationships. We know that through our unleashing creative superpower, the art, science, technology of our transdisciplinary exchange, we can navigate that chaos and cosmos. We also, over this past year, produced in partnership with Art Nodes, an art science journal in Barcelona, our first joint publication in English, Spanish, and Catalan. Reaching people where they are in languages that they speak will be one of the ways that we can reach more people more meaningfully, more inclusively, with integrity and recognition of our interdependence. We also were able to partner with the Lumen Foundation and present this year's Lumen Prize for the world's outstanding arts technology works through this beautiful and innovative online platform designed by our colleagues Gustavo Rincon and DC, who worked with New Art City to innovate how we can experience art technology and art science. So I encourage everyone through leonardo.info to visit and explore completely new ways of getting outside the box of our transdisciplinary creative work. Our partnerships also extended to the AGU and the National Academy of Sciences, where we experimented with social media to engage artists and creatives with the content of the proceedings of science gatherings. Even today, the AAAS, American Academy of Sciences, holding its annual meeting hosted by Arizona State University, featured work by Leonardo and by our colleagues from ASU and elsewhere And those are the kinds of partnerships that I've found inspiring and opening of new opportunities to unleash creative potential and superpower. We also launched this year the ASU-Leonardo Imagination Fellowship in partnership with ASU's Center for the Science of Imagination. And we received an overwhelming response, nearly 250 applications from 75 countries for 3 virtual fellowships that were designed to address social justice issues aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and do so through experimental media and unleash their superpowers in fellowship with each other and with art, science, technology, in this case, selecting 3 bio artists working in eco art, looking at environmental issues intersecting with social justice in 3 different places around the world, 3 different stages in their careers, coming from Goa, India, from the Andean community in Ecuador, and from the Yurok and Kurok tribes in the west coast of the United States. This is the work of, on screen here, of Nandita Kumar, who is working on the ways of experimenting with and sharing phytoremediation properties of plants that clean polluted waters and correspond to frequencies that we can interact with to generate music and knowledge. In my personal practice, I'm hoping to unleash my creative superpower and ignite all 3 of the powers of invitation, of love, and of imagination, in collaboration with my partner and husband, Bill Ayton, across augmented reality art works. And if we have time, I would like to share more about some of my experiences and insights from these examples. But because I know that we lost some time starting late, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let's come back to this if we are able to, and I'll follow your lead, Robert. We couldn't do any of this work, and none of us can unleash our creative superpowers or any others if it weren't for the partnerships that we need to acknowledge and explore. And with the case of Leonardo, our deep partnership development over this past year owes a debt of gratitude to our friends across Arizona State University, with the MIT Press, and with Atlas Core. We also are learning what our place in the international community is. So we are thrilled and excited to be a part of, and have been a part of, the initiatives listed here. And we invite everyone else to join us in building up an international community that celebrates the creative economy, that recognizes the power of love, the power of invitation, the power of imagination to unleash our superpowers of creativity. And you can continue to engage with Leonardo here at leonardo.info, and with me as indicated through social media. I want to close with the inspiring end of the Youth Poet Laureate of the United States, Amanda Gorman, who blew everyone away at our recent inauguration in performing her poem, The Hill We Climb. And I would suggest that this was a great example of an individual sharing very collectively and genuinely her creative superpower, and reminding us that there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And I thank you and remind you to remember and don't forget to be awesome. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Diana. That was a fantastic talk. And we'll open the floor for questions. Sorry, we'll open the floor for questions, and I'll read anything that comes across YouTube or on the chat. If you'd like to unmute yourself on Zoom as well, feel free to do that and ask questions as well. And Diana, if you'd like to take the time to show pieces as well, that's also fine. Totally up to you, however you'd like to run this.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
In the meantime, though, I mean, I want to comment just that I always really enjoy working with you and with Bill on building these pieces out. And I'm always fascinated by looking at the different partnerships that you have and the different technological intersections with art and science that you produce through this. The Lumen Prize, for example, was, and the gallery of being able to walk through and experience different pieces, as Gustavo was telling us last week as well. What's your strategy for going about and seeking these kinds of partnerships and for making really cool things happen, really meaningful things happen?
That's such a great question. How do we make cool things happen and make them meaningful? So in terms of collaborations, for several years, and I must be getting over it now, I couldn't give any talk or talk with anyone, it seemed, without quoting this wonderful line from Mark Nepo's poem, in which he says, "I wish for you the courage to ask of everything you meet, what bridge are we?" And this is how I approach collaborations and partnerships. What bridge are we? That there always has to be a bridge. And what happens with a bridge? It has to be stable. There needs to be integrity, or it falls apart. It needs to connect, and it's really good if it can be beautiful. So you know, it actually does something. It works. So it's meaningful. It opens, and it's an opening. So these are qualities of a bridge that I aspire to bring to any collaboration and partnership, so that we can make cool things happen. And it also, you know, when you think about a bridge for how I approach collaborations, is it gives you a different viewpoint. You get to the other side and you see things differently. You stop at the middle of the bridge, and we probably all have bridges in our head as I'm saying this. Like, I'm thinking of a particular bridge in Paris. It's so beautiful. And you know, you're in the middle of that bridge and you look at it and say, oh, wow, I didn't see it from this angle because I wasn't there before. It took us coming together. So so that's sort of the first framing of any collaboration, including my collaboration with Bill, and the work that maybe I will share and show a little bit of. You know, the truth is that there's always a push, a pull, and when we can both recognize that that's helpful and release the part that's not helpful, the power dynamic, the struggle. It's not push and pull like a tug of war in a partnership. It's a push and pull more like a dance step. If you're holding hands and you're moving around the dance floor. So you want to make sure that that there's real value generated for both sides. Now with Leonardo and the position that Leonardo is in pioneering this art sci-tech world that has grown up around us and now has new exciting elements that hopefully we were a part of inspiring, but now we're learning from. That means that a lot of things come to us. So a lot of partners just come to us. A lot of people come knocking on my door. And that's good and wonderful. Isn't the universe a great place when that happens? But I also need to recognize when and where those partnerships are most meaningful and important. And sometimes that means saying not now. And sometimes that means saying, I'm so glad you came to me, but I want to connect you over there. So I think being generous, bringing generosity to our partnerships is really important. Quality, both in the sense of it might be not now for me, and I'm being generous and being honest with you, or it might be not me. Oh, Robert, I want to connect you with something that Luke's working on, or Althea, or I have this great connection between you and this other partner who came to me over here. You guys should be doing this together. That kind of generosity, but then also generosity of letting your partner shine, and not as an act of charity or self deprecation, but because they're shiny and beautiful. And all the partners that I listed on that slide with our partnerships and our imagination examples that make cool things possible are doing amazing things. So we want to acknowledge and be as generous as we can. And a funny thing happens when we do that, we generate more impact. It is more meaningful. And it's infectious, it's contagious in the best possible way. So one of the things we might ask ourselves in the syndemic that includes this pandemic of COVID is, when and how is infection or virus helpful? You know, what do we want to spread? Let's spread more love, let's spread more generosity. The more generosity we give, I find the more comes back. So one of the projects that I didn't talk about that I'm really excited about is our partnership with the California Arts Council to launch Cryptech Incubator. That my colleagues hopefully will be able to talk more about on another digital culture speaker platform and other platforms, that with a very generous $500,000 commitment is seeding how we can reimagine technology created by, for, and with artists and advocates who live with the resilience that comes from being disabled and part of disabled community, and that has so much to teach us about, teach all of us about all of our abilities and disabilities. So in looking at partnership as a way to make cool things happen, I don't know how cool things happen without that.
Very nice. Thank you for that. Gustavo has a few questions in the YouTube chat. I'll read them out. He has multiple questions. I'll let you decide which ones you want to answer. How do you see Leonardo's role as a think tank? What do you see the challenges ahead that we can come together as a compassionate community? What can each of us do to help our communities? Diana, please discuss your vision of the art and research worlds merging together to tackle our fundamental problems as a human species. Climate change? Those were the list of different questions from Gustavo.
Okay.
Oh, one more he popped in is, what is your advice for future leaders?
Okay, well, my advice for future leaders is the same advice that I began with last year when we were all just in the throes of the beginning of what turned out to be this very prolonged transformative period. And that's to start where you are. So I'm going to suggest that future leaders, and frankly, present leaders, and those who don't think of themselves as leaders, all are being called on right now to unleash our creative superpowers and start where we are. The role that we play, I believe, as a think tank, as an enterprising think tank, is to inspire and instigate and catalyze the way that we can think and see and be and work with each other in reimagining this society. And that includes reimagining how we use transdisciplinary creativity to humanize our response to the challenges that we have, but also the emerging challenges, the anticipated challenges that we can't predict, because they will come. And if we infuse our responses to the challenges facing society that we've enumerated earlier, climate change, climate catastrophe, economic inequity and extreme division, political volatility or fragility, public health crises like this pandemic, systemic racism and injustice, if we respond with creativity to these challenges that I believe Leonardo as a think tank can and should lead, then we're calling on the best part of ourselves, the highest, most humane part of ourselves that requires compassion and that engenders compassion. Because when we are experiencing creativity, we become more infused with compassion ourselves. It can awaken a compassion within us. So I think that's how I pull together those many questions from Gustavo.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm just seeing an outpouring of thank yous from both YouTube and Lauren Olson here for thanking you for an inspirational talk as well. Anything else you'd like to share, Diana?
Well, yes. Two things. Well, one, I want to share thank you and gratitude because over this past year, there's been such an experience that we're still within of grief, and grief is a complicated experience, and it's not one that we can take any shortcuts to. And what we're grieving is not only actual loss of life that so many of us have been touched by, but what the experience was that we thought we were going to have this year, that we thought our futures were going to be, that we thought our present was going to continue to be. And the way that we are getting through this experience of grief and unease and uncertainty is coming together. And so I'm most grateful for this growing community. I'm most grateful for the opportunity to boldly claim that we're going to unleash superpowers and believe that it's true because of each and all of you, not only those who came tonight, but those who will visit this afterwards through recording, and those whom I'll never get to connect with personally, but trust that you will, and then someone whom you connect with will have that connection, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I would like to share the vision, literally the visuals of my vision of collaborative work that I didn't have time for tonight. So I'll look forward to doing that another time. But for now, I want to just share that the experience of exploring our creative superpower is how we unleash it. And exploring that creative journey with my colleagues and with strangers whose work inspires me and whom I've never met, And with those closest to me, including my collaborator and partner and husband, Bill, is a great joy and privilege. And I invite many others to become part of that bridge that is who we are.
Well, thank you, Diana. And thank you for that fantastic talk today and sharing your words of wisdom. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us today at this Digital Culture Speaker Series. We'll see you again next week. Bye. All right, I've ended it on YouTube, so we're not live.